Question is, can you replace the wine guard Air 360 with a Parsec Husky? Short answer is yes, you can. For the Parsec Husky here, and go ahead and chosen this little box to go ahead and put on. It's only about 4 or 5 inches deep, so it's not super tall, which is good for me and my application. Otherwise, you can take off the lid and then run all your cables and whatnot on the inside. The other thing we've got here is we're trying to replace, right, the wine guard dome antenna, which is ginormous, and in its same spot put the antenna here, but we want to do that with this adapter and get it pretty close to where the antenna is. As far as size and mounting, the reason why we're going to do it that way is because hopefully we can use some of these stock mounting holes that are spread out through the old wine guard, and that way it'll help secure it to the roof and go forward from there. So this box is a 15 by 15 inch box, and that's why we're using it. The next thing you wanted to think about is, yeah, you could use the same hole in the roof. However, the depth of the fitting here that we've got, it's got some depth to it, and then you'll see a little bit later here, we're actually going to mount that in the same hole as the speaker, right? Because that's where the cutout is for the roof. So instead of doing another hole, we wanted to use the same one, but it's so deep, I actually think you're going to have some contact there if you're to mount it flush with the roof itself. So that's why we're using this box to give us a little bit of height. As you can see, the height of the box is going to be less than the overall wine guard, so we're not like we're adding any kind of height, and obviously it still clears the height of the AC unit, so we're not adding any overall height. Here's a view of our roof. We've got the wine guard removed completely. Just for reference, that is the bathroom vent on the right there, and on the left that's going to be the bedroom vent, and then way up there is the bathroom skylight, to give you some point of reference. We've got the main room vent right here, and then we've got our AC. So in relation, you've got that wine guard that is directly in front of that main room vent, right? So we'll take a look. They've got quite a bit of a service loop on this. This is the main hole that they have cut and drilled for the wine guard assembly, right? If you look straight down in there, now it's gonna be a little difficult to see, but there's a hole that I've punctured, and then that communicates directly down to where that speaker goes. So that stock speaker system bolts up in here. We do have that magnet, and then the cable itself runs straight forward up here, and then that's where all the wiring then goes down through that center console and straight down. So you're actually going to go forward to the cap with the wiring and down. I tried to chase this stuff down by putting a ring and then trying to get a fish stick to go down there. Unfortunately, that didn't exactly work out for us, and so that's why we're doing it kind of plan B and going from there. But just to give you a heads up, you can take the actual wine guard unit off, remove it, and it looks like our box is going to fit on top of this whole thing just fine. So we'll get this service loop of coaxial out of the way. Before I do that, one funny thing is, man, when this thing was assembled, it looks like, I don't know, someone built this thing on a Friday or whatever it is. I was wondering why I didn't have any signal for my antenna, and that's because unfortunately this coaxial got penetrated by one of the mounting screws when it was being assembled. So that was kind of unfortunate. It's not a big deal. We don't actually use terrestrial TV anyway. Obviously most of us stream these days, so it's not a huge deal for us, but just one of those random things. So here we've got our box. Our box is going to fit right over the top of everything, and it's not going to be a perfect match as far as fitment, so we'll have to seal some of that stuff up, but you'll see that it'll work out just fine with the basic fitment that we've got set up here. We'll have ourselves a hole cut in the bottom, which is going to be a little offset from the center of the box. So just make sure to account for that when you drill the box and where you mount it, right? One of the other things that we're going to end up doing is, if you see here, we've got some of the stock mounting holes for where the wind guard went, and you can actually get 4 of these to line up with this box when you mount it, so it'll be a little more secure and you can reuse those same holes, so we're not drilling additional holes through the TPO roof and going from there. Bit of alcohol here, prep our surface. And once our surface is prepped and clean, then we can go ahead and peel off the 3M backing that comes with the antenna to make sure to make a nice secure seal. For this is slightly larger than the antenna itself, so we've got a little bit of working room to get it centered. I drilled it in the center here, knowing that we'd have a little bit of a service loop inside there. So that way, if we do have anything that we need to adjust, we've got room for the cabling inside the box. There we go. Nice snug fit. And we'll take our adapter plate here and washer and snug it up to finish out that secure fitting. Again, this isn't needed. This is generally going to be overkill. However, it's just going to keep us located. You see, there's not a whole lot of flex. That was one thing I was kind of worried about how the diameter of this box to the antenna itself has got a little bit of support there, so it's not going to flex too much. The box itself, again, does come with a gasket that's in here, so it is 100% waterproof, which is awesome, and should keep us running for a long time. Taking the line guard, we're going to take these stock locations like we were talking about. This way, we can use the same screws and have that bolt up pretty easy. Alright, so those are all punched. Location on them. So as you can see, we've got 2 on the fore side, 2 on the aft side here, so we should be able to use all 4 of those for mounting locations and go up with stock roof. Alright, we got our box drilled for the 4 mounting holes. We got our direction here. Coaxial is going to be sitting tight. Everything's going to fit squared up here. So that the 2 boxes, this box I should say, replaces the line guard antenna completely. We've got a few holes here that aren't going to match up on the sides, so we'll have to come back and put some sealant over those. And we've got a little bit of double-sided tape on the bottom of the box here, in addition to the mounting screws that we're going to use to fix this to the roof. We got our box mounted. All 4 screws are in place. We'll go back and do some lap sealing around the edges once we're finished. And you see straight down in the middle here in the hole, we've got our pass through to go straight down into the camper. So we'll install the actual antenna, feed the wires through, and just leave that service loop for the coaxial there. And there we have it. That is our first main stage of getting the antenna installed. This way you can kind of see the quick relationship between everything else up here. Again, we've got our vents, everything's in line with that. We'll come around and do the caulking on the bottom here in just a few minutes once we get all the cables run and everything's secure. All right, so we're back inside. So to give you a point of reference here, that is the hole that we were working with, right? Antenna drops directly straight down to here where we've got our wires. We got a 7-foot run, and that 7-foot run should take us straight back through the cabinet here down into the main wiring area. We're taking some of this stuff apart to give you guys an idea of what you can run where. The lighting's not great because I got the power off because obviously we have this big old hunk of wiring hanging out. So if you look in the back here, that is behind the cabinet, and that's a central wall that goes up, and that wiring actually goes all the way up to the top here and then over. I actually tried to take out some of the other panels and pieces up here in the corner because it actually goes up to the ceiling through here, and that's where the actual wine guard wiring is. So we've got this hole, which we have taken that stock speaker out of, and that is where our roof hole is. So right in the center there, you'll see a little bit of silver, and that's the radiant barrier. And so that's where the pre-drilled wine guard wiring came from, right? And then that wiring goes over to the corner here, snakes to the right, and goes straight down for our main wiring. It terminates down here with the rest of these cables, and this is your booster, right? And you've got your satellite hookup and so forth from there. So what I've done is I've taken that same hole that is already drilled and run a snake or a fish rod, right, straight back, because we were able to do that with a channel. And then I was able to drill a hole and fish that out. And then I've got another hole that's in the top of this service box, and we're gonna run all of our Peplink routing and wires straight through there and try to make a nice little install behind the TV here. That's gonna work for us as far as location and such. I don't know if anybody else has done this on the 21G, but that's what we're going over this, just to give you guys an idea of what I've found so far. So we'll probably end up running all the wires out of either this fitting, or maybe even take the plate here and adapt that so we can run all of our Peplink cell antenna through there, and then just mount the Peplink itself and the router right behind the TV, because we've already got power down here, right? Because we got the 12-volt power that's already wired, so it makes it a nice convenient little location. That's the only place that I found that we could do all this stuff, so that's what we got going on. All right, get ready to pull some wire. Let's do any kind of electrical work. You know how super fun that is, especially today since the power is off, since I'm working around that open panel for the happy jack and all the switches there, and so I don't want to have any issues if I bump any wires or whatever it may be. So power's off, which means the AC is off, and being here in Texas, you probably know it is about 110 degrees today, so this is super fun. However, we'll get it done. One last thing too before we start pulling all these wires. As you can see, it's a rather big group of wires here. About 1.5 1.25 once you actually get down to the wire, and obviously a bit larger than that when you're talking about all the ends of these with the protection on there, right? So normally I try to fish all of these through in just one big bundle. However, with that routing that we've got up in the ceiling here, we're gonna actually do one at a time just to make sure everything fits through nice and snug. So this is going to take a bit of time, but I think it's going to be a much cleaner and less disruption and disturbance to the insulation up above the roof. So let's see what we get. Well, this looks like a crazy rat's nest in some ways. This is actually pretty cool because there's a ton of service loop on a lot of these connectors, which is really nice. So when you need to do any kind of maintenance back here, like we did today, installing that PepWave, you've got plenty of working room, which is awesome. So now we're in the process of getting everything kind of seated back together here and reinstalled, as our lines have been run for the cellular and GPS. So let's throw this thing back together. And now that our panel's back in, throw our trim piece in, and with the trim here, it's got a couple of little posts right around the perimeter, and that just snaps in place. So be careful when you're taking that off, and just make sure you get each one of those, but it just snaps right back into place. And now we have our control cabinet reassembled, and now all we have left to do, as you see here, our PepWave is installed. We just need to go ahead and get another backing plate to hide all these wires and get our antenna hooked up here. It actually worked out. This is a 7-foot length, and so this has worked out for me. Reason why I wanted to keep the Peplink out here behind the TV area, it's open for more airflow as opposed to like up in the cabinet, right? You stick it up here in the cabinet, which would actually have less of a run and a little more service loop. However, when you shut those doors, I think you're going to have an issue with any kind of airflow, and I just don't want that Peplink getting hot, especially here in the RV. Alright, install's all finished up. We've got our power run from the 12-volt source here, going up to a hole that we drilled so we can channel up behind the panel, and we've got our Peplink all installed and squared away. All the cables run up into that upper corner, which again runs across the roof and then terminate behind the speaker, which then leads directly to the antenna. So stuff turned out pretty good. The wife decided that we needed to move it from a space here behind the TV because it was going to be visible, and so she wanted it up out of the way in the cabinet. We'll see how that works. It's got some heat fins on there to dissipate any kind of extra heat, so we will see how that works and go from there. But that is the finished installation with everything all squared away. So yes, you can install one of these in place of that Winegard 360, and everything looks to be pretty easy. 7-foot run, a little bit of a service loop up there. Antenna fits nice. Just a little bit of work on fishing some cables, but it can be done. Not too shabby. Installation is complete. We've got our box all sealed. Leveling sealant is around the bottom there. As you can see, there's a little bit of wrinkling in the roof where the old antenna was. Everything seems to fit pretty good. It's a little shorter than the last one, right? Not as high, so that's cool. Not sure if that's really a big worry or not. At any rate, this thing looks like it's going to work pretty well. We've got our waterproof box on here. Antenna sits nicely, and routing was good. We've got a little bit of a service loop on the wires inside, so it looks like we are all squared away and good to have all of the Wi-Fi's.